Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to this AFK journey video. So for today's AFK journey video, we're going to do a quick update for the top 5 best PvE teams for the factional talent stages or the AFK stages in general. And we are going to focus more on the factional talent side because for the normal AFK stage side, most of the factional talent teams, they will also work on the normal AFK stage teams. And this is where you guys can just use some of these references in terms of the teams itself and then build up all the different units that are mentioned in this video and then do the normal AFK stage side. So most of the teams are pretty similar, the combos are also really similar, so that's why we're just going to jump straight into the factional talent side and then showcase the teams while discussing about the substitutes and the power level of the team itself. And as usual, this will be a top 5, so we will be ranking the teams in, I'll say, like different criteria. Number 1, the ease of autoing, right? How easy it is for this team to be auto. There are certain teams where it requires quite a fair bit of manualing in order for you to clear the stage. There are certain teams which are really good on auto, and there are certain teams that are full auto in most cases. So we are going to rank the units based on that, and on top of that, also the units power level in terms of clearing the tougher stages, or the tougher stages in terms of the deficit push. So there are certain teams that are really good, just do a whole lot of damage and can clear through the tougher stages because of specific mechanics. And there are certain teams where mechanically on the earlier stages they have enough damage to clear through it, but as we move later and later, they will be losing quite a fair bit of damage, and that's where they might not be able to clear the stages. So without further ado, let's start with the 5th position, and that is none other than the Iron Smoky team. So for this team over here, the idea of this team is pretty straightforward. It has been a pretty consistent team since the start of the game, still really good. You just use this team to pull your Iron towards your Smoky's aroma and provide enough space for your Smoky to channel to the 3rd ultimate to burn down the HP of the opponent and also control the opponent in the process with your Iron Armors combo right here. So Iron Armors Ardent, they are pretty like standard in terms of the normal AFK stage side for the control for their AoE, and then we have Smoky for the burns itself as well as the buffs on your other units, and last but not least Bonnie for her massive damage output as well as magical damage amplification, which is able to benefit the whole team. So we have Smoky, magical damage dealer, we have Ardent, which is also a magical damage dealer, and Iron being a magical damage dealer. So Bonnie in the team will give you more damage through her Supreme Plus skill buff as well as also from her own kit itself. So this would be the most optimal Smoky Iron teams. And with regards to the substitute portions, if the opponent is not that tanky, doesn't have that much sustain, and you did rather have more survival or more acceleration towards your Smoky ultimate, you can actually put in the likes of Rowan to accelerate towards your ultimates as well as spam your ultimates for more Frost 4 spell procs right here. And for Ardent's case, if you need specific cancelling of ultimate, I'll say Lily May is pretty good because in most cases, Iron Armor's combo would be sufficient to hold the enemy in place to reposition them, and then you have Lily May to give you that additional damage in certain scenarios, as well as the ultimate cancelling for certain units like Shakir or certain units with really powerful ultimates. On top of all this, right, Skalita is also a pretty okay niche tag in terms of the slot itself, because there are certain teams with really annoying units like, for example, Torrents or even the likes of Igor, where Skalita will be able to just send them out if they reach a specific HP threshold. And the reason why this team is in the 5th slot and not higher would be because this team is relatively manual intensive. So in a day and age where auto battling as well as having the AI do the battle for you is the way to go, the auto friendliness of this team is not that strong. So it is a team where I think will be really good if you have all the time and energy in the world to manual all the stages, to pull all the enemies together and then burn them down with all your magical damage with your Smoky ultimates in general. So in terms of the cost of this team, relatively free-to-play friendly as well, because most of these teams, they are either obtainable from your usual wishlist structure, right? You usually have your Irons in your wishlist itself, Ardents from the Dream Store, Smoky from your wishlist, and then from the seasonal store. So most of these units, they are relatively accessible. The only drawback is not being auto-friendly. So that's for the 5th team, your Iron Smoky team. Okay, so the 4th team, we have the Celestial Smoky OD team. So for this one, it's basically the Maulers team, but without the Coco. So if you're not running this team in the Factional Talent stage, you can run something like this, right? The Maulers with Resto as a tank, with Twins as additional support. Previously, the team is running Rowan here for the energy regen, so you can actually use it with our Frost Fall spell right here. So this team is one of the most old school team as well, together with your Iron Smoky teams in general. But with regards to the Celestial Hypogean side, the reason why we recommend the use of OD as well as Smoky with the Celestial Hypogean tile is because as we move towards the later stages of the game, Relentless Hunt, which is Mauler's factional talent, just ain't gonna cut it for the damage compartment. So you can't actually push through a lot of stages because you don't have the damage. So in comparison, if you were to compare it to the Celestial Hypogean side, you get a fair bit of damage boost from the stat side and also a really good damage boosting ability, which greatly increases your damage output. So this team over here with OD as well as Smoky will have more damage with the Celestial Hypogean Fractional Talent, and then this is where your Smoky will be able to burn down the enemy and then have your OD slowly grind them down one by one with the support of your secondary carry from your Celestial Hypogean side. So I'll say in most cases, right, this team is relatively faked. Like the only few units I can think of for you to replace would be, well, visit Talon for the likes of Skalita against, for example, the Torrents, as well as, for example, the Igor that I mentioned earlier. Harak is also another okay choice, but Harak has the added risk of eating your own units in case you're not able to control your HP threshold. So this is probably not the best team for Harak. There's another team for Harak in top 1, which we will talk about later. So for this last slot, it will be a Celestial Hypogean. So I think any of the Celestial Hypogean that can fit into the team and then have sufficient damage to kill the enemy is okay. So we chose Talon because we want some AoE coverage, and the reason why this team is in number 4 is because this team doesn't have a lot of control, unfortunately. So in most cases where you need control for survival, if you need control to reposition the enemy for your Smoky ultimate, it is challenging, right, in terms of those stages itself. Okay, so for the 3rd team itself, we have the Light Bearers team. So for this one, we have Siren together with Sonya plus 1 Light Bearer for the Empire's Bulwark. So in most cases, at the highest level of deficit push, it will be Sinbad, because Sinbad does a lot of damage with all the debuffs he's able to provide, and he goes really well with the haste buff from the Twins itself. Then we have Hogan as the tank to soak up damage as well as control the enemies with the buffs at the start of battle. And then we have Siren to pull all the enemies together and maybe insta-kill them. We have Sonya for additional AoE when all the enemies are grouped together with Tempest Trust, with the ability to buff up the enemies with a little bit of control here. So that's why this is the core of the team. The last slot goes into Bonnie for the most optimal setup for more damage, because Bonnie is the best AoE damage dealer over time in the game right now with the AFK stages. So that's why Bonnie is the best in slot. You can also use the likes of Cassidy, right? You can actually use Cassidy over Sinbad if you are able to go full magical damage. I think this is a lot stronger to synergize with your magical teams, because you get like some magical damage boost as well as magical defense debuff with Cassidy right here. So the strength of this team lies in the ability for this team to do a good mix of physical and magical damage, making this a very good team for hybrid stages where you need both damage types to clear them. But the reason why this team is in the 3rd slot is because this team will lack a little bit of damage as compared to the top 2 teams. So when you reach stages where you need a lot of damage to bring the opponent down, this team might try go there. So this team actually works in a lot of different situations, as long as you're able to stall long enough for your Sonya to get off the ultimate for all the damage reduction, for your Siren to pull the enemy to control them, and your Hogan to just be the center of attention to draw damage away from your allies. Very, very solid team. But then might lack damage the further you go, and that's why it's only 3rd in today's slot. Okay, so for the 2nd team is the upgraded Wilder's Burst team. So for this team, Iron's like a common friend for AFK stage push. Bonnie is a common friend. Twins also really good for the deficit part with the haste boost, the energy regen, as well as the stat gain for more damage and more survival. So the newest addition to this team would be Tasi as well as our Parisa right here. So there's quite a few comments asking why is Parisa so good this season, why is Parisa dealing so much damage. Parisa has always been a really good damage dealer if you are able to group all the enemies together with Flora Splendor right here, as you guys look at the skill description. So this season she also got a massive buff in the ultimate from the charms over here to give her even more damage, and on top of that, flower power as well as flora inspiration is just really good together with your wildest team in general. So this team idea is quite straightforward. Iron pulls everyone together, stack them on top of one another. Parisa throws out the ultimate, Tasi throws down the ultimate for the control as well as the AoE damage, and then Bonnie throws the Decay's Reach for the debuff as well as damage amplification for the whole team, and also damage from the ultimate and control as well. So this team I'll say is quite fixed in terms of the highest deficit push, because these are all the units that are best at doing what they do in the current meta. The only unit which I think you can replace would probably be Tasi for Arden, I guess. Like if you don't have Tasi built up, then Arden's a pretty decent control plus damage dealer in Tasi slot. Less effective compared to Tasi sleep, but I think combos very well with Iron nonetheless. So you can do this, or you can just slot in the Iron Armors combo in the event if you have sufficient damage for you to kill the enemy, right, without Tasi or without like that sleep with like damage from Tasi itself, then you can run this combo as well. So that is with regards to this team. So these are the few substitutes, but Parisa will be quite key for the highest deficit push side, because this teams in general relies on the damage output of Bonnie as well as Parisa to clear through the highest deficit stages. And last but not least, on the first place we have your Harak Celestial teams in general. So Celestial teams with Harak is really good because we have your Celestial Hydrogen talent, and on top of that, Harak is an amazing carry as we move into the later stages with more control immunity, more magical damage immunity or magical damage reduction from the enemy side, and that's where Harak's physical damage as well as his ability to prevent the enemies from healing, and also his ability to grow stronger the more enemies or more allies he eat, makes him a really good late game carry. And on top of that, Flash Feast apparently is an effective way to win the fight by just slowly devouring all the enemies as the battle passes by. So if you have a way to manipulate the HP on your team to make sure that you don't have the lowest HP percentage unit, then you will let Harak eat onto all the enemies units. So very strong stuff, right? On top of preventing the heals to kill off certain teams or units, which just stores you out with heal itself. So that's why Harak's insanely good as we move on to the highest deficit levels. So for this team, we have Bonnie, Talin with the damage output, Smokey as well as Twins for the support, and Smokey also for the buffs and the burns when we reach the third aroma itself. So for the substitute portion, I think this team is relatively fixed as well if you're talking about the highest deficit push, but a few units you can replace would obviously be maybe taking out Talin for maybe another Celestial like Scarlita, right, against certain fixed teams. I think Barrel works as well, but Barrel might lack a little bit of damage. Twins is quite important. I think for this slot over here, Cryonaya might be okay if you manual the Cryonaya's ultimate, but then in most cases I think Talin is just the best because Talin has that revive ability, Talin has that AoE coverage, and additionally in the event if Harak's Feast goes into the cooldown side, then you can actually tribute your Talin to be eaten so that you keep all your other units safe. So this team is relatively auto-friendly, but in most cases against certain matchups where you need to manual your Harak's ultimate so that you feast onto the right unit, you still need to manual with this team, but pretty auto-friendly based on my personal experience. So that's pretty much it, the top 5 best PvE teams with regards to the factional talent side. So I'm not gonna talk too much about the normal AFK stage side because like I mentioned, most of these teams, they will translate to good teams or very good teams on the AFK stage side as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like, subscribe to see more. See you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.